Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. We will be getting started here in just a couple of minutes. Welcome to the Rural Workforce Innovation Network, otherwise known as RWIN, Grants Workshop Part 1. We will go ahead and get started. It is at the top of the hour. Hello, and my name is Carol Watuski. I am the team lead for the Rural Workforce Innovation Network and your host for today, and we are so glad you could join us. And we'll go over, next, we will go over today's agenda. Next slide, please. We will have some opening remarks from Jackie Ponte-Lazaric, and then we will introduce our speakers and go in directly into our presentations. This is part 1 of this 2-part workshop, and so part 1 we're going to be talking about the systems that you need to be aware of and to enter into for the federal grant systems, such as Grants.gov and the SAM system. After the presentation, we have set aside time for question and answer period, and we'll wrap up with information on part 2 of the workshop that will be held next week. During this workshop, please add your questions in the chat box. If you look at the lower right-hand side of your screen, you'll see like a conversation bubble. If you hold your mouse over it, it'll say chat. If you click on that button, it'll open up a chat box on your right-hand side of your screen. Please, like I said, anytime during these presentations, please add your questions and comments there. We will collect those, and when we get to the question and answer period, we'll address them at that time. So to get us started today, I am honored to introduce Jackie Ponte-Lazaric. She is the Chief Innovation Officer for USDA Rural Development and leads the Rural Development Innovation Center. The Innovation Center's mission is to identify best practices and bring continuous improvement in the program delivery and enhance the quality of life in rural communities. The center works to transform rural communities through strategic partnerships, data analytics and evaluation, regulatory reform, and enterprise risk management. Through Jackie's leadership, rural development has improved and standardized its commercial guaranteed loan programs, developed strategic investment data tools to improve program delivery, built performance dashboards, and shepherded the agency through the Farm Bill and other regulation development and implementation. Now it's my privilege to turn it over to Jackie Ponte-Lazaric. Jackie, next slide.
Thanks, Carol, and welcome everyone. I'm really excited to open today's workshop. It's a joint effort between Rural Development and the Energy Communities Interagency Working Group. One of the things that Rural Development prides itself on is our partnership with other agencies, and so we're so happy to be doing this as a partnership today. As federal agencies, we want to get our funding out to as many eligible recipients as possible. But there are many federal programs to navigate, and sometimes a community or an applicant will need to access multiple programs to get a project fully funded, or to fund different stages of a project. And we understand this can be challenging. At RD, we hear often from rural communities that they face two key challenges in working with federal grant programs. First is just navigating the filing process, and second is understanding all that's necessary to do when managing a federal grant. Sometimes just finding the information needed to apply for or manage a federal funding opportunity is the hurdle. So we've designed this workshop to share some basic but vital information on the federal grants process, from application to managing grants once they have been awarded. This workshop is especially important to rural communities that might have limited capacity to develop grant applications and manage grants after receiving them. Worked in rural areas for a long time, and what I know is that people in rural areas oftentimes are wearing multiple hats, and so that, you know, every time you have to learn something new, you're adding another job to your already busy schedule. So just to give you a little background today on our RWIN network, in 2021, RWIN's membership increased over time from 142 to currently over 400 members. So we started this effort a few years back, and we're real excited to see the interest in it and the expanding of that membership. You can become a member by visiting the RWIN webpage and clicking the join button. If you know someone you think might benefit from being a member, please ask them to join as well. We've held 12 workshops so far, everything from federal and educational institutional partners sharing funding opportunities to a whole host of specific topics. And all of those recordings are available on the RWIN webpage. So if you missed them last year, feel free to go back, review them, send us questions or comments or suggestions for other convenings that you might like to see. This year in 2022, RWIN's going to be hosting more in-depth workshops based on those initial workshops, such as this one on topics that were identified by our network members. So you're driving our agenda. USDA Rural Development invites you to visit our website, our RD website, to learn more about the many, many programs we offer to rural Americans. Programs and funding to support rural communities include business loans for startups and renewables, entrepreneurs, biofuels and other products, value-added producer grants, utilities, everything broadband, electric, water, sewer, you name it, we do it. In our housing portfolio, we do single-family housing, multifamily housing units, we do community facilities. We can build a town from the ground up. So we're super excited to share all those programs with you, but we know it's a lot to understand and to figure out which one fits you and at what time it does. So we would like to extend a thank you today to the Interagency Working Group for hosting the platform. We had such demand for this session that we needed a larger platform, and so with their assistance, we're able to offer this workshop to all of you. We are partnering with the IWG because, to a large extent, we serve the same rural communities, particularly in Appalachia. And we share the common goal of economic revitalization for distressed communities, including coal and power plant communities. This is a partnership that runs deep and will lead to many more connections around our shared interest in leveraging resources to better serve our shared customers. And we know, although RD has significant funding to offer rural areas in the space of energy, the Infrastructure Act provided significant funding to DOE, and we want to make sure our rural customers know about those programs and are able to access them for the benefit of all the rural Americans who live where we work. So during his first week in office, President Biden signed an executive order creating this interagency working group on coal and power plant communities and economic revitalization. The initiative is co-chaired by the director of the National Economic Council and the National Climate Advisor and administered by the U.S. Secretary of Energy. Lots of agencies are represented at the interagency working group, including the Office of Management and Budget, Department of Energy, Treasury, Interior, Agriculture, Commerce, labor, HHS, transportation, education, EPA, and the Appalachian Regional Commission. I would like to introduce today's presenters, and we'll have two of them. The first is Judy Sursa. She is a senior program advisor in the Grants.gov Program Management Office, where she has worked for the past several years, primarily providing support to both applicants and grantors who use Grants.gov. Before that, Judy spent 17 years working on various offices throughout the Health Resources and Services Administration, connected with HHS, including their Office of Grants Policy. And her background is in program management as well as information technology management. We're very happy to have her with us here today. Heather Heinkamp is one of our rural development employees, and she is a program analyst in our Business Center Office of Compliance and Rural Development. She has 30 years with the agency in the local and state offices, and now she's working in our national office. Heather and her husband are empty nesters in rural Iowa, cheering on the cyclones, and Heather is one of those people, you know, rural development's full of them, people who are very customer driven, very mission oriented, so we're super happy to have her here today. And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Judy, to get us started on a presentation on grants.gov. Judy, I think you might be on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. Now I can share. Great. Are you seeing my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet?
No.
Hold on. Why?
Here we are.
Okay. Here we go. So thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. I know that people are very excited about many of the grants that are being posted on grants.gov as well as other sites. But grants.gov is the system, the site where all the federal grant making departments and their agencies and sub-agencies go to post their discretionary grant funding opportunities, and where you can go to search for those funding opportunities and to apply for them. So today I'm going to talk about the topics here listed on the agenda, how to navigate grants.gov if you're new to the world of federal grants, how to register to submit an application, how to search for grants on grants.gov, what's in an actual grant funding opportunity, using a platform that we refer to as Workspace to prepare and submit your application, the importance of tracking the application to make sure that to see it through its final destination validation, as well as reaching the actual agency for which you are applying for funding. And at the end, I'll provide some tips and resources. We have a help desk where you can reach them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, at least at this time, through email, as well as a toll-free phone number. So if you haven't already been to the grants.gov website and you land on our homepage, the two tabs that I have highlighted here in red are probably where you're going to want to start. The first one is Search Grants, and the other is Applicants. Grants.gov, as I said, we have a lot of resources on our site. We have YouTube videos that were created in 2 and 3 minute snippets that cover every function that you as an applicant would or could have questions about. So people do find those videos very helpful. We have a user guides. We also have an online help content. and lots of other resources as well. Several years ago, we set up a section on our site that we refer to as Learn Grants. And this is a place where you could go to basically get sort of an introduction of federal grants, kind of a Grants 101 that gives you information about the federal grant life cycle, which begins in Congress, where legislation is created. Then the agencies that have grant making authority will receive that legislation. They will create a grant funding opportunity. They will post that opportunity. They will receive applications, review the applications, make funding decisions, and provide. It's a cradle to grave system that if you are awarded a grant, you'll become familiar with rather quickly. We also have some information about various grants policies and how federal grants are formed. Actually, when we know about upcoming training events, we will post those there as well. Grants.gov has a function on its site that we call the managed subscriptions, where you can go in if you have a Grants.gov account, and you can get one very easily. It doesn't take much time at all to create a username and a password and get a Grants.gov account. You can go in and sign up to receive email notifications on funding opportunities for various topics, or if there's agencies that you want to receive notifications when they post their opportunities, you can get email notifications of those postings. You can also sign up to receive email notifications if you're interested in a particular funding opportunity itself. And you want to make sure you're notified if the agency changes something. For instance, they may change a deadline date, they may extend it, or they may change eligibility criteria and so forth. So it's a good feature to have. So registering for grants.gov requires that you first register at the sam.gov website in order to obtain what we call now the Universal Entity Identifier, or UEI for short. And if you're familiar at all with grants, you will know that the UEI was formerly known as the DUNS number. No longer are we using DUNS numbers. We have now migrated to the UEI, which you obtain on the sam.gov website when you begin your registration. But it's important to note that you must have a complete sam.gov registration in order to submit an application in grants.gov. Now, the person that goes to the sam.gov website is what we refer to as the e-business point of contact, or e-biz POC. This person is the one that's responsible for overseeing all the activities, basically giving responsibility for individuals within your organization to represent you in grants.gov, such as creating a workspace to prepare the application and to submit the application. This eBiz POC also affiliates you with the actual organization for where you reside. Getting a complete sam.gov account registration can take several weeks to accomplish. So you want to make sure that if you don't already have a sam.gov account with the UEI, and you have to have the account registered, you begin that registration process well in advance of any deadlines that you must meet when applying for a federal grant. Now, we say it takes approximately 7 to 10 business days after completing registration. I would suggest that you begin that registration even earlier than that. I mean, I've seen it take longer than that. So you definitely do not want to find an opportunity and not be able to apply for it, just simply because you don't have a SAM account. There's also other things that SAM requires, and I think there's someone after me that's going to talk about sam.gov. I believe that they are still expecting that you submit a notarized letter to them as proof that you are actually who you say you are and you represent a particular organization. But I'll let the person that follows me take care of all that information. So once your SAM account is active, Grants.gov receives an electronic transfer, we call it extract file, of all the information that has been updated or has been created new in SAM.gov for each day. We get that extract file every 24 hours. Once, if you're a new organization registering for the first time, you can register for a Grants.gov account, but you will not be able to be affiliated with the organization until we have your information from SAM.gov. Also a note to the eBiz point of contact that they must renew their registration on an annual basis. It's every year. If you're the eBiz, it's a pretty big responsibility, and you make sure that you keep that SAM.gov registration active and you have the accurate point of contact or e-business point of contact in that account. You can also, as I was saying, you can register for a basic Grants.gov account at any time, and you would do so just by clicking on the registration link at the top of the website on the header of every page. Here you would set up a username and a password, and you would sign up if you're interested in getting the Grants.gov alerts or Grants.gov newsletter, or to actually access our blog. So there's basically there's two roles, and there's two accounts. So the eBiz we talked about, that account is established in SAM.gov. Then we also have two other roles, the AOR account and the Workspace Manager account. So again, the eBiz is responsible for assigning the AOR account and the Workspace Manager account. Now, the AOR just stands for the Standard Applicant Organization Representative. This is someone with this role at the organization once they have this role, they can submit applications on behalf of the organization. And the second role that we refer to as Workspace Manager, that is the role where that your eBiz point of contact will assign to you if you will be the one creating workspaces. And I'll get into more details about what Workspace is in just a minute. So searching grants is fairly straightforward. You can begin your search by typing in a keyword or a set of keywords, or if you know the funding opportunity announcement number, which every opportunity has, and that is created by the agency, you can enter that in the opportunity number field. Or if you have or you know of the CFDA or assistance listing number, you can also search in that way. These are a lot of terms, there's a lot of details, and if you're new to grants, it can be a little overwhelming, so just bear with me. But I think hopefully you'll find some of the key details that you will need at some point in the future if you haven't already used grants.gov. So the default, as you move down the page a bit, is set for opportunity status is set at forecasted and posted. So this screen capture was taken a while back, so the numbers aren't accurate, but basically the definition of forecasted means that the agency is planning to post a funding opportunity sometime in the near future. If the opportunity status reads posted, that means that it's currently open and the agency is receiving grants applications. And then if you scroll down a little bit further, you'll see the closed opportunity category status and the archived status. The closed means that the opportunity has just recently closed within the last 30 days or so. And archived means that, and as you can see, this number was over 50,000. We've kept that because people will get on the site and they'll look for a funding opportunity that's currently open and available to apply to, but they won't see it. So if you click on the archived opportunity status checkbox there, you can do a keyword search, or you can search by agency or criteria or eligibility, and look to see if a particular agency has ever posted a funding opportunity that would be a similar fit to meet your needs. Again, the forecast is basically just exactly that. And it's going to tell you what your what the agencies are planning to fund. You can also search by category, eligibility, funding, agency, as well as opportunity status. Here we go. There's the slide for forecast. I missed it. Okay, so again, the forecast, and I will provide these slides to the team so that you can get copies of those if you're interested. But a forecast, again, is an estimate of when an agency plans to post or open their funding opportunity and is accepting applications, and estimate of when those due dates will be, as well as an estimate of the total amount of program funding that the agency is planning to award, and an estimated award date. Now, not every opportunity is going to be in a forecasted status. It may be in an open status. And if that's the case, you'll see when you search on the site, the Synopsis tab. If you click on a funding opportunity, it takes you directly into the synopsis. Here you'll actually see the funding opportunity number, the open and close date, the program funding amount, and a number of awards the agency is planning to make. You'll also see, if you scroll down through the synopsis, you'll see a description of the program, gives you a little bit of information about what the agency is looking for, as well as contact information. If you need to reach out to the agency itself for help just trying to prepare your application, and you're not quite sure what they're looking for, you have questions about eligibility or what have you, there will be a contact, either a phone number and a name or an email address where you can reach out for more information from that grant program office. We also have a tab to the right of the synopsis where we list different versions. So in some cases, again, agencies will modify their opportunities, and they may change something that you may need to be aware of. So if you want to see if the agencies modified the opportunity, you can always click on version history, and that will give you an idea of what they've changed over time. To the right of version history is what we call the related documents tab. And this is often where many agencies will post what we call the full announcement. This is where they'll post their supporting documentation, as well as instructions about what they're expecting in the application. You'll get much more information in these documents than you would in the synopsis itself, as well as more context, perhaps. And they basically just provide more detail about what they're looking for in the application. And lastly is the package tab to the right of the related documents tab. And here you'll see, basically you can view at the time, unless you're logged in, you can view the actual forms that you'll be required to fill out that the agency has posted, as well as the instructions. So I talked a little bit about Workspace in the beginning, and basically what Workspace is it's a place on the Grants.gov website where you logged in with the Workspace Manager role or the AOR role can create your own little workspace for a specific funding opportunity. In that workspace, if you're the one that set it up, you can invite other participants to collaborate with you as you create that application and get it ready for submission. And when you're done, you submit it. So this is basically just a screen capture of what a workspace in progress looks like. Again, it's a shared online environment where you can work simultaneously to fill out the forms, you and your team. The participants can be from any organization as long as the Workspace manager knows either their email address or their username. They can invite anyone to come into the Workspace and assist them. They have to have a Grants.gov account, but they can invite them to come into the Workspace. And I think some folks may use this like to invite, there are grant writers out there, and they'll often be asked to help write proposals or applications, and you could and they may actually have access because they have a basic account. They may have access easily to your organization if you were so to choose them to come into the Workspace to help you prepare the application. Again, here's the list of the roles. So the eBiz POC, really their only role is to assign roles to organization members. I also neglected to tell you that the reason why I'm going over all this registration and talking to you in detail about eBiz POC, today I'm talking mainly about organizations. There are some opportunities that are posted for individuals, but there's so few that we try to focus on the registration process for organizations. So again, this is just an overview or a quick, recap of what, the Workspace manager does and what their role is. And you can also actually have a participant that has no specific role, but if you add them to your Workspace, they can be working on the budget, they can be working on the program narrative, or what other information you may need to include in your application. Another thing that the Workspace manager can do is they can actually reassign ownership of Workspace, which, does come in handy sometimes. There's a couple different ways that you can apply for, fill out forms, I should say, in the Workspace. You can use a web form, which is very simple. It's like any web form, you just click on the web form, it opens up, and you just fill out all the fields. Or you can, if you have, and I know in rural America this does happen, if you have an unstable internet connection, we still have the opportunity for you to download the PDF forms, fill them out offline, and then upload them back into the Workspace. And just to note, the web forms, if you're filling out, if you're creating an application that you're going to submit in a Workspace, you can use both the PDF forms as well as the web forms in one Workspace. They both will, or they're both compatible. You can also reuse forms from other Workspaces if you have, Workspaces that you've submitted in the past, and that does help save time. So these are just some screen captures of the web forms, and everywhere you see a red asterisk, that really just means it's a required form. It has to be filled out. And basically, there's validations in place that won't allow you to go past a required field. There are often many forms as well that require you upload attachments. You can use any type of form or field, type of file to attach, but I think most people are more confident with a PDF. Another good thing about Workspace is that it auto saves every 5 minutes. So if you have to get up from your workstation and get a drink of water or whatever, and you come back, your information is going to be saved where you left off. We also tell people to fill out the SF424, which is one of the standard forms that every federal grant applicant must fill out. You should fill that out first because it pre-populates the forms that follow it. We often refer to this as the cover page. And if you decide that you would feel more comfortable using the PDF forms, you'll want to download them. And so the forms are developed using Adobe software. So we encourage people to only use Adobe Reader to access these forms because they just work the best. Again, you can fill out the forms. They look just like the old paper forms. The highlighted areas in yellow just mean they're required fields. When you're done, you can just click submit, or you can also, I forgot to say, you can reuse forms just as you can reuse and reopen workspaces. And that does save a lot of time. People find that very valuable. Again, the AOR is the one that actually submits. The authorized organization representative, their name will appear on the SF424 cover page, and they are the ones that actually submit the application. So you must have someone within the workspace that has that AOR role. And in some situations, if you have a small organization, you may have both roles. You may be AOR and workspace manager. You may also have another separate account as the eBiz POC. So, it just depends on how large your organization is. It's really important that you track the submission of your application to make sure that the agency retrieves it. So when you, as the AOR, click on the submit button, you'll receive an on-screen confirmation receipt. And in that receipt, you'll receive what we call a Grants.gov tracking number. This number begins with the uppercase word grant with a series of 8 numbers behind it. Also in this receipt, you'll receive the official date and timestamp of the actual submission. And this is very important information. Your agency may ask you for that, or they can ask us for it, and they can see exactly when you hit submit. I have to say that agencies are pretty particular about their deadlines. They don't like extending deadlines because they're on usually very tight time frames to get everything done they need to get done, by reviewing applications to making award decisions and to actually cutting the awards. So they don't like, again, they don't like to make extensions, and often will not give people exemptions for missing a deadline. So just keep that in mind. You want to make sure that you plan to have your SAM account completed, as well as your you submit early. Those are two really key points that I like to put out there for applicants, because it's crucial that you make sure, don't wait until the last minute to submit your application, because you just never know when you might have an issue. It'll pop up, and you definitely do not want to spend lots of time and energy and effort preparing an application only to miss a deadline. Now, the AOR, the person that actually submits the email, will receive a series of confirmation email messages. The first one you'll receive will be the same thing that you see on your screen in the receipt confirmation. And it basically just says, your application's been received by Grants.gov. And then a minute or so later, maybe even less than that amount of time, you'll receive another email. These emails, again, all go to AOR. Your application was validated, it passed the validation in Grants.gov and is waiting for the agency to retrieve it, or it was rejected and here's why. Go in, fix the errors, and resubmit. And lastly, the last email that you should receive is that the agency for which you are applying for funding has gone into Grants.gov in some form or fashion and retrieved the application. And again, these emails will come within minutes of each other. So you should know right away whether or not your application was retrieved by the agency. And if you don't know, you want to reach out to our help desk for any questions you may have using grants.gov. And again, I'll provide that information at the end. So again, it's, as I said before, it's really important to track your application to see it through all the various validation stages. You can also, after you've submitted your application, you can download your application to see exactly what the agency is going to retrieve from grants.gov. You can download it in the form of a zip file, or you can download it in a full PDF file version. If you're logged in, you can click on the Applicant tab and click on the link Track My Application, enter your grants.gov tracking number, and it will give you the status information. It'll tell you whether it's received, validated, rejected, or retrieved by agency. Several years ago, we set up a mobile app, and on the mobile app, you can search for grants on the go. You can edit and save searched queries. You can receive notifications about upcoming opportunities or modifications of opportunities. And you can actually complete an application within the app itself. We have a couple tips for applicants. Again, I cannot state this any louder. Register with SAM. Make sure you give yourself plenty of time, 2 to 3 weeks, to complete that registration, including the notarized letter, and submit your application early. Please do not wait until the last minute to submit your application. So many people miss deadlines because they procrastinate and they wait. You want to make sure you thoroughly read and follow all the instructions that are provided. Fill out the SF424 standard forms first. And make sure when you upload attachments that you don't use crazy characters, because that could cause the attachment to fail. And you also want to make sure you enter in the correct UEI number, and you use a compatible PDF software from Adobe. It's free, and you can check on our website to make sure that the version that you have is compatible. And lastly, we have ways for you to connect with grants.gov for support. We have an email account. You can email them anytime. You can call them anytime, toll free, except for federal holidays where the help desk is closed. We have a Twitter account. We have the YouTube tutorials that I talked to you about earlier. We have a blog that with a grants.gov account, you can access. We have newsletters and so forth. And I think I am finished with the presentation, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn you back over to the next presenter.
Thank you, Judy, for all that information. There's new tips that I've picked up, and I thought I was well familiar with the website. So wonderful presentation on all the new things and all the things that are available, especially the training and asking questions and getting all the additional information just by going to the website and learning about all these opportunities.
Sure.
Next.
Thank you.
Next, we have Heather Homkamp. Sorry about that, Heather. And she's going to give us just a quick overview of the SAM website and sam.gov that Judy mentioned earlier in the presentation. Heather?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. And yes, I am just going to give a really quick overview regarding sam.gov. sam.gov is required by our agency according to Part 25 of the Title II of the Code of Federal Regulation, that does require that all applicants and recipients of federal awards to be registered in SAM, the System for Awards Management. There are a few exceptions, just of those exempted by statutes and those applying as a natural individual. And by a natural individual, we mean by somebody applying not associated with an entity or business. So in most cases, we are not going to see that. Most of you, the majority of you, will be required to register in SAM. To register, you will need to visit the site that is listed there on the slide, https://sam.gov, and that will take you right to the SAM page, the SAM website. We do advise that you be sure to complete a full SAM registration, and that means include the representations and the certifications. Those are required for our programs at Rural Development. Those questions that are included in the reps and certs replaced several documents from the application process for all federal agencies, including ours. Next slide, please. So SAM.gov is a General Services Administration site. So it's a GSA site. It is not a rural development site. GSA does provide a lot of great guidance on their site. You might have noticed on the previous slide that when you do visit that home page, they have a Get Started button. It was the green button on that first page. So if you are a new registrant, you can click on that Get Started button and start that process. For more information though on any page, if you scroll to the bottom of the page, you will find that those customer service links. And there you will see a help and a contact link. And when any user clicks on that help, there are various guides available and FAQs. Or if you click on the contact, you will find an 800 number plus a live chat. And I personally have used both. And they are fabulous. They provide excellent resources and assistance. I also, though, will advise try those. If you do need to use those, call first thing in the morning or use the live chat. Because as with any help desk, when you go first thing and try first thing in the morning, you're going to get the best service and the quickest service. But in essence, you know, our agency, as with all federal agencies, we do require that the SAM registration, but that SAM.gov site is not our site. We do not have the expertise to provide you that guidance. GSA has that site and they will be able to provide you that best guidance. Some of the tips and tricks are the best guidance that Judy already shared with you is that you do need to register early. Or if you are already registered, make sure that you renew early. Because as she also shared, you do have to, of course, provide those documentation, that documentation every year. And so that needs to be submitted early because sometimes that 7 to 10 days is not early enough. It may take a little bit longer and you do not want to miss any deadlines because that registration is required. And I believe we'll be having Q&A and I will be around for that. So that is my presentation. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Heather, for that quick overview of SAM. And I just want to reiterate what she said, because I've been to the website and there's a lot of tutorials, a lot of help videos, and the live chat does respond right away. So thank you, Heather, and reminding of that, because that is going to be the best way to get the information you need as you are completing the information required in SAMs. So now I'm going to ask all our presenters to turn their videos on, Judy and Heather and Jackie, if you're available. And we are now having our question and answer portion of this session. And we thank you for your questions in the chat, and please continue to add those to the chat. And we will try to address as many as we can during the time that we have allotted. So to start off with Judy, if you are an independent grant writer, what if you are an independent grant writer and you apply on behalf of multiple different entities? Would you have to have an account set up for each entity, or can you have one and apply for multiple people as a grant writer? And you're on mute, Judy.
Sorry. I'm never going to get used to that. After 2 years, I'm still not. So if I was a grant writer, I would have a grants.gov account, and then I would have several different profiles, and I could have profiles because in some cases, these agencies, not agencies, these organizations can actually have grant writers create the workspace. They can give them roles and so forth, depending. So I would have different profiles under my account. That's how I would manage it. I would have, so I would go and log in. I'd have a default profile, but then I'd also be able to switch from one organization to another.
Okay, thank you. And then do individual state employees need and this is for both of Heather and Judy, if either one wants to answer, do individual state employees need a UEI number, or should a department have one UEI number for the entire department?
Well, I think I'm gonna pass on that. I will say that it just depends on how your organization is set up. There's small organizations, there's big universities have lots of UEI numbers. Just depends.
And I would reiterate that it depends on how you're organized and how you're going to be applying for financial assistance with well, any financial assistance. I would use banks as an example. We have a lot of banks that we serve with our guaranteed programs. And so, for instance, you have that bank that is set up as, we use the term the parent and the child entity. And so you have that national bank that has their parent entity, and then they have all their branches. And so then they set up their child branches within SAM. And so it just depends on how you are applying for assistance and how you need to set up your entity.
Okay, and then could you explain a little bit about the UEI number with SAMS? Would you submit your application, and does SAMS email you that number when it's gone through after all the paperwork has been submitted? Or how do you obtain that UEI?
That UEI number is assigned as soon as you are registered in SAM. That's a good question. I believe it is emailed. Otherwise, you can log right back into SAM and you see all of your information there. I do know also you can log into SAM and check on your status of your registration. Because I had a couple of rural development staff contacting me about that, because there's a due date coming up for one of the programs. An application due date is coming up, and so they were contacting me about SAM registration and how that was going. And but you can log into sam.gov and see where your status is on your registration. And so you can also log in to find all of your SAM information, as far as, what did you put in there for your registration, what information, but also your UEI, when will it expire, all of that good stuff.
Okay, and then Judy, when I'm applying for this, what do I apply for first? Do I apply through SAMS first and then create my grants.gov, or vice versa, or what do you recommend?
Well, you can't submit an application without a SAM, without a UEI. You can't, and the UEI has to be in our system. Also, you can't really create a workspace without a UEI if you're an organization. So you would want to start the SAM registration early. Now, if you're brand new to grants, you can have a grants.gov account. You just aren't affiliated with that organization yet until we receive that information electronically in our nightly extract file. So you can do both simultaneously. You can go to grants.gov and you can search. You don't even have to have an account to do that. You can look at the videos and you can look at all the resources that we have on the site. However, you're not able to actually create a workspace and prepare your application on the site or submit your application without a fully registered, being fully registered in SAM.gov.
Thank you. And the other question I have is, can a grant contractor, somebody that an organization contracts to manage their grants, serve as a grant manager and apply for UEI and SAMs, or does the organization that's actually receiving the
I
grant?
can answer that because we've had a lot of inquiries about that.
Okay.
So you can register as we call them non-registrants, but you can get a UEI, but you don't have all the other information that you need to use grants.gov. To do business with the grants.gov system, you have to have a complete SAM registration, which means we have the eBiz information, we have all this information that we need. And you definitely have to have an active SAM account in order to receive an award if you are selected for one. So that's why I really strongly encourage all applicants, organization applicants, that if they plan to submit applications anytime in the future, and it could be a month from now, it could be 3 months from now, start now. Get your SAM registration set up. There are some cases where they have non-registrant, or we were calling them in the beginning partial registrations, partial registrants, where you can get a UEI right away. But that's, I believe, mainly for like subawards. It's subawardees. It's not the actual organizations that's actually submitting the application that gets the award. If that makes sense, you have to have a complete SAM award.
Okay.
Or registration.
And then for both of you guys, how do I know when it's coming up for renewal, or when I need to go in and renew? You said it's 1 year. Is there any way I get
Before 1 year? Yeah. Heather can answer.
So the point of contact when you register in SAM, you are responsible for entering the information, the contact information of at least one point of contact. So it is very important that you keep that up to date if your point of contact changes, and that can be a challenge for nonprofits. And so because when your renewal is coming due at 90, 60, 30, and 15 days, and then the date of renewal, you will get that point of contact will receive emails.
And that point of contact in grants.gov is referred to as the eBiz POC.
Okay, thank you. And then on the time, it says the workspace for grants.gov, it says the workspace saves automatically every 5 minutes, but do the web forms save every 5 minutes when the workspace auto saves?
Yes.
Okay, and while they're being worked on. And what is the time period for an auto logout on grants.gov? How before
I think
automatically?
it's 25 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
I think. I mean, it's been a while since we've deployed that function, I should say.
And then the other question is, for the grantees, do the sub-grantees and contractors, are they required to register in sam.gov too?
No.
I don't know anything about contracts or sub.
No, they are not. No, they are not.
They're not.
If they are, we've investigated that a lot. If they are not receiving funds directly from the government, now sub-awardees have to obtain a UEI.
That's where we're getting mixed up at grants.gov, because
yes,
a lot of people are coming to grants.gov with a UEI, but they don't have an active or a full registration.
Right.
So
The sub-awardees have to have a UE. They don't have to have the full registration.
Right.
Right.
And then a question for Jackie, since Jackie is able to join us again. For rural development programs, are all rural development programs loaded in grants.gov, or are there programs that you have to apply directly with rural development to?
That's a great question. Our grant programs are loaded in grants.gov. Our loan and grant combinations and our loan only programs are largely done through applications direct to the state office or through an electronic filing system. But regardless, you can always start and ask for information at our local offices.
And where would I find those, a listing of those local offices?
Ooh, Carol's quizzing me today. You can find them on our website, rd.usda.gov, and there's a link right to our state offices. Here's the trick though. If you just type rd.usda.gov/ and the abbreviation for a state, it'll take you right to that state. So if I was looking for, say, Virginia, it would be rd.usda.gov/VA. Put that in, it takes you right to Virginia, and I'll tell you where their offices are located and give you points of contact.
Thank you. And Judy, in the grants.gov, in the workspace under roles, it has 3 dashes. How do we change that in the workspace?
The workspace under roles, 3 dashes. I would have to actually see it. I'm trying to imagine what, I'd have to see it. I'm sorry. That's something that you could ask the help desk.
Okay, wonderful. And another question that has come up for local governments. So it's a local public body government. It is typically required to have an authorizing resolution approved by the governing body as a part of the, is it typical required to have an authorizing resolution approved by the governing body as a part of the grant application?
I don't know anything about that role or that, is that a part of a form? That's just very specific, sounds like a very specific program question.
And I think that's going to be one of those things that when Judy mentioned before about reading the announcement and what are the requirements in the announcement, because each federal agency, as their programs are designed, have specified requirements for their grant applications. And in those notices of funding or funding opportunities and the different acronyms that they have out there for their funding announcements, they specifically lay out what is exactly needed to be considered a complete application. So it is very important to read through that notice. I like to print mine off and highlight it, but it's really important to read through those notices specifically and look at what is required, because sometimes it may be dependent on the program and how the program is designed, and then other times it may not be. So somebody asked a question here. Please share how to handle a new company signing up for the first time who will be the owner of older companies that may already have a SAMS account and even a Grants.gov and a SAMS number. How would this be handled in setting up for both the new company and its sub-company? So if there's an existing company that was taken over by a new company, how would a new company get this all set up and include the older company's information?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that would have that, yeah, you'd have to, that's a business process that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, I think I'm not either. I think they're going to have to contact the help desk for SAM.
And do you have to be a nonprofit, or can for-profit entities create a SAMS and register into Grants.gov?
You have to be what? A non.
Yeah.
Can a for-profit or private business
Yes.
register into
Well, it
Grants.gov?
just depends on the announcement. And usually they'll tell you in the eligibility criteria who's eligible to apply. And if they don't spell that out in the announcement itself, I would reach out to the agency directly and find out. They should be providing that information to you because all the programs are so different.
Okay, thank you. And then that was kind of alluding into the same thing, and that was kind of what I alluded before to the question with Jackie. Are all federal grants advertised through Grants.gov?
that a Jackie question?
No,
Or
it's for
USDA?
all of you. Does all federal agencies advertise their grants announcements through grants.gov?
So usually just discretionary grant funding opportunities are on our website. Mandatory grants and formula grants are typically posted on grants.gov.
Yeah.
And a
competitive-
mandatory grant or a formula grant could be something like Medicare, I think, or Medicaid, or something that that is not competitive in nature.
Right.
It's
So
not-
we would typically post our competitive grants on grants.gov. Rural Development also has grant dollars that are used in combination, loan and grant combinations. And so those may not go through grants.gov. They may go through, they may come out in a funding announcement like Reconnect in the Federal Register that says, hey, we have money for loan grant combos, for 100% grants, but it's all part of our Reconnect broadband program. And here's where to apply. And there's an online filing system to do that. Our DLT grants, however, right, our distance learning and telemedicine grants are competitive. It's a short window, it's a limited amount of funding. Those go through grants.gov.
Okay, and then because it was mentioned in the beginning, and people that may have had experience with applying for grants in the past, and you mentioned about this before, I think, Judy, and yours, but this goes for anybody on the panel. Do you now have to have a DUNS number? And do you have to have a DUNS number to get the new UEI unique identifier number?
No, and you actually can't. SAM.gov doesn't have DUNS numbers anymore. We still have some in our system because we've used DUNS for so many years. But no, UEIs are the new official unique identifier. So no, Sam's not going to give you a DUNS. When you create an account, like we were talking about earlier, you'll get a UEI number right away. When you got a DUNS number, you went to Dun & Bradstreet, but that is no longer part of the business, with part of the business, doing business with the federal government.
That's not to say Dun & Bradstreet still provides a DUNS number, so that's not to say some programs might still require it for their business process, but SAM does not utilize the DUNS number effective April 4th of this year.
And I don't know that the federal government does either. I think grants and contracts, I don't know about loans, but I think grants and contracts are all UEI.
Well, some of our programs are still determining if they will still utilize the DUNS. That's why I said that.
Grant programs. So that's interesting.
And Judy, just for clarification, a question came out. So there's a clear, I believe you said the work manager, the WM role.
Yeah, Workspace.
Workspace role can work on the grant application, but they cannot submit. The AOR submits. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
But the Workspace manager can also you can have all the roles. Just depends on what your eBiz point of contact assigns you. So if you're a small office and you've only got like 3 people working in the office, in some cases, one person does it all. They just have a separate eBiz account from an applicant account. So you can consider a Workspace manager role an applicant account. You can consider an AOR an applicant account. eBiz is not. But they could have an applicant account, if that makes sense. Okay. You can have one eBiz to many applicants. But each organization is seen as one unique organization that can submit.
Okay, and must the eBiz contact and SAM match the contact person listed on the application or the AOR in grants.gov.
Can you repeat that?
Must the eBiz contact in SAM match the contact person listed in grants.gov?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And all we have is the eBiz email address and number and the organization name. That's what we
Okay,
get
and
from
then
Sam.
wonderful. And then are the assigned roles the Workspace or the AOR specific to the user's login?
Yes.
Or are they to the Workspace itself?
No, it's to their login. It's to their grants.gov account. But again, they can have different profiles under their account. So like the example with the grant writer, somebody who uses grants.gov on behalf of an organization, they could have several different profiles under one account. And it just depends on, you can set that default profile for any one of those when you log in, but you know, you're tied to your login. So if I'm an AOR and I submit an application, I'm logged in with my own credentials. Those credentials, my name and information, are going to appear on the forms, the grants.gov 424 form. You know, it's a cover page, and it gives you all the basic information up front with your UEI and your EIN and who's actually the authorized organization representative and who's the business person.
Okay, thank you. And then to continue on with those kind of questions, I see that my registration is updated in sam.gov, excuse me, with the renewal date of April 2023. But grants.gov says our eBiz POC is expired. Can you tell me what is wrong?
I don't know that eBiz POCs can expire, but they can leave organizations. And your eBiz POC email may perhaps need to be updated in sam.gov. I've never heard of an eBiz POC being expired.
And
I would, that person should contact sam.gov, their federal service desk.
Okay, and then if my SAM account expired, and I did not did not update in time by the deadline for my UEI, what would be my next step? What should I do?
Update your SAM account.
And I know, like I said, because SAM is ran by GSA, and it's another thing. But do you guys have any information or the type of documents that I may need or have in front of me to start registering for SAMs? Do you have any recommendations?
No, we have
Or would I
information.
find that?
Well, we have information on our website
Go to this.
under how to apply for grants, how to register. So that information should be updated. I hope that it is. It better be. But that information should be all on our website. And that hasn't changed. That process hasn't changed. It's the UEI that's changed, and the removal of Dunn and Bradstreet in that process.
Yeah, just go to sam.gov and click on the Get Started green button and go from there.
Okay,
Good,
and
good advice.
Okay, and it will tell me what kind of documents I need to have as I'm working
Yes.
through it. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And let's see here. And I think that's most all of our questions that we have to that we've had gone through here. And so just kind of to stress again, as a wrap up, you know, what Judy said, what Heather has said, and what is said in the beginning, start early. If you are thinking that you're going to be applying or you're interested in applying for funding, to get your SAM going and get things started and get your grants.gov accounts set up, because they do take time. And you want to have all that in place because grants are announced at different window times. And correct me if I'm wrong, Judy, some are 60 days, some are 90, some might be longer, and some may be shorter. So the opportunities um, are going to be kind of short on that. And then I have a question for either Briggs or Bill, who is from the energy communities. How do you let people notice about funding opportunities for those coal communities or those energy communities out there? Is it all through grants.gov or is there opportunities posted through your webpage? If you could let us know.
Yeah, hi, this is Briggs White. Yeah, so you can sign up on energycommunities.gov to receive a newsletter from us and receive updates. We're sending those out about every other week just because of the volume of the funding opportunities coming through, particularly with the infrastructure bill. But you can always just check back on the website, and we're certainly not as expansive as grants.gov, but we do try to tailor it and filter from the huge universe of opportunities to the ones that would be of most interest to energy communities. So that's sort of our approach.
Wonderful, thank you. And I have another one here that popped in. Does the cage number have anything to do with the UEI number that you get from SAM?
I can actually speak to that a little bit because we've had a lot of questions about the cage code lately. The cage code is actually assigned by the DLA, the Department of
Defense.
Defense. Thank you. Department of Defense, a division of the Department of Defense. And as of last October, I believe it was October 21st of last year, they are no longer assigning that to everyone. And so you will find that when you either renew or you newly register, you may not have a cage code. If you Google it, you will find, if you Google, what is the cage code, you will find more information about it. That's what I've done to better understand it. But the cage code is really tied to procurement purchasing. So really, for the most part, most of you don't even need a cage code. And that is, I'm assuming that is why they have made that decision. We had some questions about that. And so that was the purpose that I contacted the SAM help desk, I believe that was last week, to ask some other questions, and ended up talking a little bit more about the cage code and found out that they do, in the past, they were assigning cage codes based on different account numbers. Because there was a question earlier about if you have multiple departments or multiple branches of your entity. Well, we had one entity that had, so they have one tax ID identification number, with multiple branches. So those multiple branches, they all have the same UEI. And we were trying to decide, okay, how do we know which one's which within our agency? Or, well, how do we decide which one's which? Well, come to find out, when we started looking at it, they had different cage codes assigned for each different bank account, because of course when you set up your registration, you have a different registration for each different bank account, and that's what had happened in the past. What they'll do in the future, I don't know. That's beyond me. I'm not exactly sure what will be done in the future. So that's probably more than you wanted to know about the cage code.
No, it's interesting. What I heard when they made that
That's what
decision.
Sam had informed me.
Yeah, when they made that decision, it was for the it was good. You still would have to get a cage code if you were applying for like a State Department grant or a USAID grant. But for all other grant programs, that wasn't going to be a requirement anymore. That's what I was told.
Right. It is in the FAQ. It is in the FAQs. If you do want to know more about the cage codes, you could just put cage in the FAQs and you will find it about who is going to get it and why. But for the most part, most are not getting it.
And it should speed up the registration.
Okay. I would think so.
That was often part of the delay.
Wonderful. And thank you, Heather, for mentioning that SAM is a system that covers multiple facets of doing business with the government. So you will see some things in there. The portion that we're concerned about and we're addressing in this workshop is registering to be able to apply for federal grants. There is another whole component around the procurement and contracting with the government that will, I would recommend reaching out to SAM itself and GSA, and that's a whole nother agency to work through to address those. But just to be aware that the system is designed for for kind of a single entry point across multiple government facets. So
That's a good point.
just to let you know. And that's what, like grants.gov is a single entry point for grants too, for many of the grants. And so it seems a little unwieldy, but you have to understand there's a lot of federal agencies and a lot of federal opportunities. And so it's a system that's trying to designed and trying to create to have a single point access for many different programs all across the government for our customer base to be able to access and learn about the programs that are available. So with that, now we are getting close to the end of our time. Thank you for all your questions, throwing questions out there. We will try to save as many as these and try to address some more in the future, or try to do some responses back on the future of this. But before we move on to the next slide, I do want to throw something out there. So I'm going to call you out by name, and I'm just asking our panelists for final comments. So I'm going to call you out as I see you on my screen. So Jackie Ponte-Lazaric, if you have any final comments.
First, couple of things. One, I put in the chat that we have our special version of Innovation Matters. For those of you who don't know what Innovation Matters is, it's a publication that we put out that lists a lot of funding opportunities across our space, not just here at USDA, but with some of our partners, anything that can help a rural community. And it's Earth Week. We're super excited. It's Earth Week. It's infrastructure investment time. And our colleagues and friends at DOE and at the Interagency Working Group are highlighted as part of this special edition of Innovation Matters. So we'll have our regular edition coming out soon, but this one's all about energy. So if you are working with a client, or if you are a client or a potential applicant who's interested in energy funding, this is the publication for you. So the link is in the chat, and please use that. I just want to thank everybody for coming. Thank our speakers today. Thank you for handling these questions. Heather, you look like you're in space. You look lovely and in space, but I love your background. But what I love about this network is you guys are driving the content, right? And as we get to your each layer of the onion that you want us to peel away, my hope is that long term we're going to really get to some of those nuggets that will drive change in the way we do business, to make it easier for you to have strong, robust workforce development for our rural communities. That's what this is all about. And that's it, Carol. Thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Judy, if you would have some final comments, please.
Oh, no, not really. I appreciate being invited, and I've learned a lot about SAM and about your programs, and I find it very interesting. They're all so different, and it's always fascinating to me to see how they work on the other end of grants.gov, on the back end after they've passed through. So thank you. I hope it was helpful.
Yes, Judy, thank you so much for your presentation. Very informative. And like I said, I thought I knew some things about the website, but I learned a lot more today. Heather, any final comments for us?
Just reminding everybody, register or renew early from the tips and tricks that we've heard and learned through our customers. And Judy, I learned a lot about grants.gov. So some questions that we've had just over the last couple of days, you actually answered them. So thank you. And thank you for having me.
And I learned a lot from you too. It was good.
And if you would like some final comments, please.
What's that? Me?
And for Briggs White, if you have any final comments?
Here, Briggs. Okay.
Sure. I would just like to say thank you to USDA and our speakers for their flexibility in hosting this great workshop, which clearly is on target with an outstanding attendee set today. And I think that just goes to show you that there's such an opportunity facing energy communities and rural communities, given all of the funding opportunity that's available. And this grant writing workshop series just couldn't be more timely. And so again, thank you so much for that. And we look forward to working with everybody as partners. Without you, none of this happens. And we'd love to hear about your success stories, but also about your challenges. So be in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And if you could share the final slide to bring up the next slide of the slide deck, we'll go ahead and wrap up the workshop. Thank you. So this is our Let's Connect. It has on here the RWIN webpage. And again, my name is Carol Watuski and the RWIN team lead. If you have any questions, suggestions, topic ideas that you would like to share with the RWIN team, we ask that you please send us an email at rd.innovation.rwin@usda.gov. We do check that email box consistently, and we were taking in, as with this grants workshop, it came from input from all of you as from the RWIN network members themselves, as well as different participants, and this helps us design future workshops. I just want to remind everyone, when you registered, you did get registration for both parts of this workshop, and the next part 2 of this grants workshop will be next week on April 28th at 3:00 p.m. Eastern Time. You should have the links for that. The next part of this workshop is the second part of grants, and that is some tips and suggestions on completing the grant application itself and going through the grant application, as well as we're going to have a portion on grants management. What happens when you get the money? What are the requirements with that afterwards? So as we said, we wanted to break this out into 2 components of things you need to do to get started. And then next week, we will be getting more into how to complete the application and then what you do when you do get them, if you're successful in your application. So with that, and no further ado, I would like to thank everyone for attending. We've had such a great attendance. I would like to also send a special thank you out to the Interagency Working Group Energy Communities for hosting this platform. For people that registered early, they noticed the change in the platform because we ran out of space, and IWG Energy Communities was so wonderful of partnering with us and providing this space and this platform so we could allow many, many more to register and be a part of this workshop. So a special thank you for partnering with USDA Rural Development, the Rural Innovation Network, on hosting this platform. That is all we have for today. Again, I just want to remind everybody, recordings of this and part 2 will be placed on the RWIN webpage after part 2 is done, as well as the Energy Communities webpage. So you will be able to access from both of those a copy of the recording. We will be getting, after the second part, we will be sending an email out to all registrants with a copy of the slide decks from both sessions. Thank you and good afternoon.